It's another one of those videos where we take a deep breath and say out loud, "Wrestling, you so weird." Where else, regardless whether you see it as sports or entertainment, can someone with a big gold belt that's meant to establish you as the best of the best all of a sudden be treated as if they suck? That makes no sense. It's like telling someone you like them and then booting them in the shin before you run away. Aside from a bruise, that individual will be left scratching their head trying to figure out what the deal is. It's games, I tell you. Games! This has happened for years in WWE though, and don't we all know it? How many times have we seen someone crowned as the champ and then lose more than Kurt Hawkins? What am I, a fan, meant to think of that, other than this person clearly sucks? And if they suck, what does that say about their opponents who can't seem to take that title away for some reason? It makes no sense. It has gone on and will continue to until we're all dead. I'm Simon from What Culture. This is 7 times WWE buried their champions. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to stay notified. Ding, ding, done. Number 7, Randy Orton. It doesn't happen today as Randy Orton is a bona fide top guy, but there was a time when he was still making his way to the promised land and had to go through some nonsense. When Orton defeated Chris Benoit to capture his first World Heavyweight Championship at SummerSlam 2004, the idea was it would elevate Randy to next big thing status, and eventually he would then reach the level occupied by Ric Flair and Triple H, who were then his mentors. There were major plans for Orton, and then they were all shelved. On Raw, 24 hours later after his victory, Trips turned on Orton after he successfully defended his title in a rematch with Benoit. This made sense, even if it occurred too quickly. Triple H had essentially revealed that Evolution was designed to protect his title rather than succeed his legacy. It was all expected as factions are created to create matches further down the line, but WWE treated this like everyone had taken loads of acid and burned through weeks of intriguing story in one night, and then all the lines got blurred anyway. For example, Orton responded to Triple H's betrayal by spitting in his face and then running away. What kind of good guy does that? No one, that's who. Only assholes do that. 2004 was a weird time. Orton fared little better when he lost the title to the game less than a month later at Unforgiven. He never felt like the champ and afterwards was booked to attack Triple H by jumping out of a cake. And well, that was just the end. Number 6, Rey Mysterio. Rey Mysterio was billed as the ultimate underdog in WWE, so it wasn't surprising that he was booked as a total jobber as World Heavyweight Champion in 2006. It was a mystery, pun intended, why it was decided to give him the title in the first place. May as well have given it to a fish given how he was treated after the fact. Many people say this was because his World Heavyweight Championship run was done due to the death of Mysterio's good friend Eddie Guerrero. That brings questions and problems all of its own, but even away from that, if Rey was someone who was fighting from underneath, wouldn't it have made more sense for him to snatch victories from the jaws of defeat like he had been doing? The answer is yes, but nobody cared about that. Instead, Mysterio was presented as being hopelessly out of his depth. He lost to Mark Henry, cleanly, Finlay and the Great Khali. That's just the start of it. He did beat Gregory Helm, so there's that, but mostly he was a man holding a belt, whereas he really should have been seen as a champion. Number 5, CM Punk. CM Punk was awarded a run with the now deceased big gold belt after winning WrestleMania 24's Money in the Bank ladder match. He cashed in on heel Edge on the June 30th, 2008 edition of Monday Night Raw, and from there, he was barely portrayed as a babyface, let alone the man. A draw with Batista followed at the Great American Bash, but don't forget that Kane's running gave Big Dave an out. Punk did enjoy a clean win over JBL at SummerSlam, but the match went just 11 minutes and 52 seconds and was positioned in the mid-card. Also, his opponent by that point was not the star he'd been. It was decent enough, but hardly the stuff from which legacies are forged. Ironically then, it was Randy Orton's legacy faction which buried Punk the deepest. Orton, Cody Rhodes, Ted DiBiase Jr. and Manu, of all people, if you remember him, punted him out of his championship scrambled events at September's Unforgiven. What's worse, his replacement was Chris Jericho, who before this had been almost killed by Shawn Michaels in a brutal match. So he could recover, but not the champ. Punk was granted the opportunity for revenge, but didn't get any measure of it. He only defeated Orton via DQ and lost in his goal to win the belt back from Jericho. By October, Punk had to be content with beating Manu on the house show circuit, so no wonder he got fed up and eventually left. Number 4, Seth Rollins. In hindsight, Seth Rollins' first world title run feels special. I don't know why, but it does. At the time, though, that wasn't the case at all. After Rollins defeated Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns in an impromptu triple threat match at WrestleMania 31, Rollins resumed feuding with Randy Orton, who had defeated him earlier in the night. And that's when Seth stopped getting any meaningful wins. From Extreme Rules 2015, when Rollins won after Kane's meddling, such protection became the norm. At Triple H and Stephanie McMahon's request, the Big Red Machine was recast as Seth's babysitter. He would help out all the time, and eventually when the pair fell out with each other, they acted like an old married couple. I can't see WWE doing that with Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock during the late 90s. It watered his run down, and there was a feeling that he was being treated like an undeserving paper champion who held on to his gold as a result of flukes as opposed to being awesome, and that's even more stupid because Seth Rollins is awesome. After all that, he did defeat Kane with some ease at Hell in the Cell, and it's only now he's finding his feet as a babyface. Short version, WWE could have done more with Rollins and went way too far with the whole cowardly heel thing. Number 3, Wade Barrett. Wade Barrett is one of those guys that did not get a fair crack at the whip at all. He should have been the first ever English-born world champion, and that didn't happen. He did, however, get some decent runs with the IC title, but even then, come on. Despite winning the thing 5 times, you'd struggle to recall any wins or losses because he was never booked like a warrior. He held it twice throughout 2013, but was pinned in non-title matches by Sheamus. He was rarely allowed to successfully defend the title on pay-per-view either, which made his already baffling win-loss record as champion incomprehensible. If his losses to the Irishman and the likes of Bo Dallas were engineered to promote upcoming pay-per-view bouts, then sure, it makes sense. But Barrett faced neither man on the big stage, so he was just losing. Because why not? WWE's handling of Barrett was almost impossible to fathom, really. He was tall, could talk, found a gimmick people liked, came across as tough, and he could go. And yet he was booked as a chump when he was champ. My brain hurts. Number 2, Chris Jericho. Not the case in recent times, given who Chris Jericho has become, but Y2J's first title run never came across like it should have done. Everybody may have been shouting that Jericho beat Steve Austin and The Rock in the same night, but actions speak louder than words, and he was never allowed to make it seem like it was due to him being any good. Upended again for the returning Triple H who took the title off him at WrestleMania 18, even Jericho's white-hot clash at the Royal Rumble 2002 with The Rock wasn't able to get a decent ending. The man obsessed with lists not only needed help from Christian and Lance Storm, but he also smashed Rocky in the balls. That idea wouldn't have been as bad, but it's what came next that pulled the rug out. Jericho was basically positioned as second to Stephanie McMahon, even though he was the one with the belt. At one point, Chris was even put in charge of looking after her dog Lucy, or in short, the person who was the main event of Mania was a dog sitter. Yeah, that makes sense. I remember when Ric Flair did that, even though I don't, because it never happened. Jericho came into his own years after this, there was no going back, but during the first go around, WWE could have done so much better. Number 1, Jack Swagger. Jack Swagger's rise in 2010 was strange. He definitely had something. I remember warming to him a lot, but really the trigger was never pulled. It all started at the close of WrestleMania 26 in the Money in the Bank match. Swagger's win surprised everyone, even more so as it took him about 21 agonizing seconds to release the briefcase from the damn hook. It was so uncomfortable, it was the equivalent of watching an over-the-top sex scene with your parents. You just wanted to die. It didn't take him long to cash in either, as he did so on the next taped episode of SmackDown, but fast forward to Raw though, and he was swiftly and cleanly defeated by Randy Orton. And I did say Raw as well. The potential pay-per-view clash was just given away and the champion lost. He then fell short against The Undertaker and then once more to John Morrison on successive episodes of SmackDown. And you know what the follow-up was? He beat Orton cleanly at Extreme Rules. I hope you're keeping up with this. Swagger then lost to Kofi Kingston and Rey Mysterio, and it became very clear that whatever Jack was meant to be was no longer who he was. It was the beginning of the end.